Good morning, folks. We have a quorum. We can proceed semi-timely, contrary to my firm commitment to my colleagues and to you as a community. So we'll start with roll call.
Councilmember Bredefeld. Councilmember Chavez. Here. Councilmember Esparza.
Present.
Councilmember Soria. Council Vice President Arias.
President.
And Council President Caprilio.
I am here. Thank you. If you'd all stand, please, and join us in pledging allegiance to the flag. Okay, ready? We'll salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. All right, folks, the first item is the City Attorney's Office. I see a lot of smiling faces. Welcome, and I assume you'll make the presentation as compared to the Finance Department?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Thank you, sir, and please proceed.
Sure. Of course, this is my sixth budget presentation here. The first one, I think we were talking about layoffs, so we've come a long way. First of all, working through the PowerPoint, that slide is just to demonstrate that we provide legal services for all the city entities, I think except for retirement. And right at the beginning, I wanted to note that we have an incredible group of people, 45 employees in the office, 7 supervisors, executive assistants like Noemi, our budget analyst, management analyst, she goes by Turbo, here to help. And then I wanted to point out, since it's one of the big topics today, Rami Morgan, who is our senior paralegal on the end over there helping with PRAs. Of course, the office is extremely busy. Next slide. This is just to show some of the things that have occurred over the last year. Of course, with the economy doing better, with more development going on, that's a lot more work for our office. We have, in litigation, we have 86 new litigation cases this last year. We have 245 litigation cases currently pending, and we usually resolve about a third of those each year. Most of the cases we get are either settled for a nominal amount or we get them dismissed. The Labor and Employment Group, which consists of 3 lawyers now, they're extremely busy too. We have prevailed in all of the disciplinary appeals that went to CSB. And we reviewed in the last year about 281 disciplinary actions. We also handle bankruptcy cases on behalf of the city. It's usually where we're a creditor and listed as somebody who is owed money. We have handled 45 of those. But PRAs is really where a lot of the extra work is going on right now. Over the last fiscal year, we've responded to about 1,800 PRAs. That works out to about 7.5 per day, but currently we're up to about 10 per day. And understand that each PRA may require looking at over 1,000 pages of documents and emails and those kinds of things. And then also, of course, we respond to subpoenas. If there's litigation where the city is a witness or has documents, and we've responded to 315 subpoenas on top of that. We also prosecute violations of the municipal code. We have 2 lawyers that do that. And then last year, we have initiated 1,666 criminal prosecutions. That's usually the police department generating those cases. And then that's with a total of about 6,500 appearances in court. And then, of course, we, especially in election years, we have a lot of questions dealing with ethics and election issues and that sort of thing, too. So that's generally what's going on in the office. This is actually we'll do our asset report too. This is a summary of what asset is achieving, but I think the most important thing to note from asset is that there are various ways of generating more habitable, affordable housing in the city of Fresno. And what asset does, both staff and our office combined, is probably the most efficient and cheapest way to get more quality, affordable housing in the city. When we're paying or subsidizing affordable housing in anywhere from $250,000 to $400,000 per unit, we can do this for well under $50,000 a unit, and we're not paying that money. So, of course, we've got a number of cases. The receivership program has been extremely effective. In every case where we've sought a receivership, we have succeeded in getting it done. I wanted to point out the law clerks. We've had up to 6 law clerks at one time. These are effectively our interns. The law students who help us out, they get some great experience. And then as of this coming Monday, or this last Monday, we have hired Jennifer Wynn Bowie, who was one of our law clerks for 2 years, to now, since she has passed the bar, to be one of the lawyers in our office helping with asset. And she'll do a great job for asset. Yes.
How many receiverships have there been?
I think it's 15 receiverships.
15.
And that involves several hundred units of housing, 15 different properties.
15 different properties, and you don't know how many housing units that is? Because some of them have been apartments? Some of them are houses, some of them are apartments?
Most of these are apartments. Christina, do we know how many units?
The majority of the completed receiverships to date have actually been single-family homes because they came to us as vacant, blighted homes, mostly through the NRT Neighborhood Revitalization Team. Currently, we have one pending multifamily. I believe that's 3 units, and we will be filing another one that's, I believe, 4 units. But the majority actually have been single-family homes.
How many units total have we done in receiverships?
One moment. It's actually going to be about 40. The first receivership, not in the last year, total. In the last year would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Would be 9. 9
And
units.
so when those have they been typically vacant houses that have been ignored, or they've been?
It's a mix. So the first receivership, and again, this isn't fiscal year, but the first receivership we handled was an occupied multifamily property. Majority of the single-family homes have been either vacant or substantially ignored with squatters, transients, that kind of a situation. Currently, the one that we are in process of getting towards a receivership that's a multifamily is occupied but very, very dilapidated, and I believe it has a deceased property owner who obviously has not been paying attention.
So these are properties that clearly have been very blighted, ignored, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so we have a lot of apartment units that are also ignored. I'm wondering, since that's a big issue for the council, obviously, since we have asset and want to get the people who are truly slumlords and to get them to turn around their properties, and these have been receiverships because they've not responded to the city, right, in terms of turning their property around, correct?
Well, yeah, and a good point to make is having that receivership program in place is the hammer. The majority of times, we start down that path and then we get compliance.
Okay,
And it
so
doesn't
that's a
end
good
up being
point, too.
receivership, so it diverts into compliance. And
Right, and that, I mean, I think there's unanimous support here for this and recognize how this has been effective. I'm wondering why we're not expanding this to the apartment owners that we know are the true slumlords that are not being responsive. I mean, I know there's the rental inspection program, which, I don't support, but this I do support. Why we're not expanding it to those units, since this is clearly very effective, it makes perfect sense for it to be effective. Why we're not going after some of these larger units? We've hit, 3 units or single-family homes, but I think we ought to be expanding this to apartments that are being ignored.
if it's on our radar, we go after it. Now, if you want to expand the program, that, of course, is a policy call. If you wanted to add resources to do even more, I think there's probably a limitless supply in the city.
Mm-hmm. How does it come on our radar? How do these single-family homes, how are they coming on the radar, but some of these larger, and larger meaning, anything above 4 units to 100 units, why are they not on the radar, but these single-family homes are?
There is a variety of ways. Some of them come through council offices. through constituent complaints. Some of them are drive-bys and we observe it. Sometimes we hear from an occupant or a neighbor. Sometimes our people go out looking for things. We get referrals from other agencies or, for example, Patients Mill Rod. There's a variety of ways. But what you're saying is that why can't we do more? Yes, with more people, we could do more, and that's totally up to you.
Councilmember Bredefield, I put a motion on the floor a few days ago to move neighborhood services over to City Attorney's Office. So I think that might be one way we're maybe able to ramp up those efforts.
Is that what Councilmember Esparza made a motion? Would that be helpful in terms of expanding this program?
Well, I think what that's talking about is moving existing resources to be under our office. What I can think of, maybe the efficiency of having everything in one office might help. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's an important thing the council to consider. I mean, this is a big issue, and I think this is an effective program. And as you said, it's a limitless supply that could be challenged and dealt with through this very strong hammer of receivership. And it's something I think we ought to look at. Okay, now.
But it is.
No, I want to register for the record too. I know we're voting on motions, or you all are voting on motions on Tuesday, but I have strong concerns about moving neighborhood services over to the city attorney's office. So I'll save all of that for Tuesday, but just, food for thought this week. And I look forward to that conversation next week. So.
Right. But I do want to emphasize that even though there are 15 formal receiverships, the majority, we get compliance, just having that potential there, which is ideal, because then we can settle that one and move on to the next one. Next, requests for legal services. Most of the projects we get come in through staff, through a request for legal services. Here are the numbers over the years. 5 years ago, we were about 1,400, and we're hovering around 2,400 in this past fiscal year. And so it's slightly down from the year before. There are a lot of projects we get that do not come in through requests for legal services. Most of the work we do for the elected officials are not. Litigation is not. But that's just sort of an objective measure of how much work is getting done. And so over the last 5 years, we've almost doubled the amount of work with adding just a couple of lawyers. Authorized positions, this is just so you can see where we are. We are at a total of 46 authorized positions now, and that does not include temporary positions that we've had. For example, the law clerks and an administrative clerk that we hired to help out with reception to take the load off of our legal secretaries, and then our contract attorney, who is paid out of our contract counsel budget that does PD advice and municipal prosecutions. Impacts to resources. The overwhelming impact right now is PRAs. Even before the changes in the law dealing with police records, we were getting killed with requests for documents. And frequently, when there's a request, it includes emails, other sorts of documents. We work with ISD to run a search of emails. Sometimes that can turn up several thousand hits when you would think it might be just a few. So we have to sort through those. Every single piece of paper has to be looked at to make sure it's not confidential, attorney-client privilege, and it's relevant to what the request was before it can go out. We cannot take the chance that something attorney-client privileged would go out by mistake, for example. Now, with the changes in the law dealing with police records, SB 1421 and AB 748. 1421 deal with officer-involved shooting records and some other types of police internal affairs or personnel records. And then AB 748 deals with body cams, and that becomes effective July 1st. Somebody has to look at all of those records. Initially, there's going to be a big push to, of course, look at the last 5 years of police records. Then AB 748 ongoing is going to be overwhelming, and we're not even sure how to deal with that. The difficulty it is when you're looking at body cam videos. Every minute of that video has to be looked at. And frequently when there's a call, there could be 8 police officers there, and they each have video running. And we have to look and make sure that we screen out anything that, for example, might be attorney-client privilege, but really to look for confidential matters that shouldn't be disclosed. For example, images of domestic violence victims, juvenile victims, or even perpetrators. things dealing with health records, HIPAA, and so forth. And then some of them, but a lot of the records is then after the fact during the investigation phase. So that's going to be an ongoing demand. And the thing is, with documents, you can scan through documents pretty quickly and get them out. But video is real time. You have to look at it in the time that it took to do the video to begin with. And an officer-involved shooting could generate several hundred hours of video. So that is the overwhelming impact to resources in our office right now. And as you know, our office screens all of the records for the entire city before they go out. Municipal code violations, like I said, there's several thousand of those going on. That's taken a lot of time. We used to have one person handle that. Now there is so much, we've had to assign a litigator to help out with that too. With the economy doing relatively well, we're seeing a lot of development projects, more EIRs, plans, specific plans, updates on the general plan, and so forth, and that has taken a lot of work. We've added a lawyer to help out with that too. Election, campaign, ethics, and conflicts issues. We do a lot of work there, and typically that's the kind of work where you expect an immediate response. Frequently answering those kinds of questions, it's either within an hour or the next day at the latest when we're answering those kinds of questions. And then, of course, with 4,000 employees here total almost, we have a lot of personnel issues and disciplines and so forth, and civil service board appeals, which are essentially mini trials. Contract counsel costs. Contract counsel costs are, for the most part, not through our budget, but we do manage it. And I think it's important to note that over the last 8-9 years, contract counsel costs have remained level or are going down. Some of that's a reflection of what happens to be going to trial and so forth, but a lot of that is good management. Our two chief assistants, Francine and Katie, manage the outside counsel, transactions, and then litigation. We are good at keeping them efficient, finding people who can do the work at reasonable hourly rates. And then, importantly, keeping a lot of work in-house that previously might have been sent out, especially on the transactional side. Just for reference there, I've shown some of our typical outside counsel rates. They vary from $225 an hour to $385 an hour for labor and employment kinds of work. And if somebody were here working full-time at those rates, that's what it would cost the city. At one of our labor and employment lawyers at $385 an hour, that would be $616,000 a year if we were to pay that equivalent. So the people, you're getting good value for the people in our office, because anything we can keep in-house versus sending out save the city money. The next page are changes to our budget. These are the things that were not necessarily the things that we had asked for, but the changes that were programmed into our budget. The way that I kind of see it, there are some things that are directly in our budget, personnel costs and so forth, and then on the right side are the things that are passed through, with the charges that get distributed to all of the departments. The next page are the items that we had submitted to the mayor's office for inclusion a few months ago. Fund the 4 law clerks at $75,000. The transactional attorney at $115,000, we're withdrawing that one. The temporary admin clerk to help with reception, that takes the load off of some of the legal secretaries, and it's more efficient to have somebody else doing that rather than tying up their time. 2 legal investigators, that's totally a policy call, up to you, whether you want to add that to help out with code enforcement. An additional paralegal for PRAs at that cost. Actually, we would ask for 2 of those given the workload now. Fund training and CLE, that's
City
throughout
Attorney, really quick. That's different than what we have in front of us, your list?
We're looking at the page, I think it's the page before that.
Page before that.
This is what we submitted before, then there's another page of options for now.
Thank you.
Yes. Training and CLE, that's throughout the office. The attorney CLE budget has been the same for about 10 years, but costs are going up, and that reflects that. Office supplies, with more people, we need more supplies. Publications and subscriptions, this is our Westlaw subscription, books that we need to do legal work and so forth. It's about $54,000 a year. We'd asked for an extra 10, but it was actually reduced 4. And then new computers. We are very intensive use of computers with our legal research and especially with PRAs and pulling up those documents and saving them. And we need some new computers that are more up to date, and so that's what we'd ask for the computers.
Counselor, are these 1 through 9, are these in the order of priority, or are they in no such order?
Roughly.
Okay.
But the next page is really the priorities. The current needs, the final page in our budget. The first one is really doesn't really affect us, but when we first, you all authorized the $50,000 funding for the budget analyst, we were at a precarious budget situation. We didn't know if we would have $50,000 when it came time to do it, so the budget had put that money in contingency with a council later had to vote to take it out. I don't think that's necessary anymore, so what I'm suggesting is that just do the same budget. It's cost neutral, but just don't put the contingency in there. So you can use the budget analyst throughout the year if you want to, and you don't have to come back with an item to remove it from contingency. There's no cost to that. The PRA personnel, this is our highest priority. Add 2 paralegals to help with PRAs. Fund liquor inspections, of course, that's up to you all. That item's there pursuant to the items coming forth on liquor inspections. That's essentially 1 investigator, and I understand it's proposed that it would start in January, so it would be about half a year's cost for that, plus the startup and ongoing resource cost for that. The total cost is, I think, $97,000 in the first year. Code enforcement resources, this is totally up to you. That's a policy call if you want to add resources there. Increase the contract counsel line item from 175 to 200. It's been 175 for quite a while. Some costs are going up, and we've had some additional demands for us to actually engage some outside counsel to help with some projects directly. So adding 25 there would be helpful. Hiring, retention, promotion, add $100,000 for our office. This would be the Unit 2 employees, the ones that are not represented. That's to reflect the increased expertise and value of the people in the office, and the cost. It's more cost effective to keep that work in than to send it out or risk losing somebody. And then the final one is pursuant to Councilmember Esparza's motion to transfer all or some of the code enforcement functions to the city attorney. There's no net cost to that because it's simply a transfer. So that's it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. On our screen is Member Soria, followed by Member Arias.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple comments and some questions. Thank you, Doug, for the very thorough presentation. I also want to thank your entire team. I think that they do a phenomenal job, and you guys are extremely responsive, so we appreciate your guys' quick turnaround when we have questions. I know sometimes it's even beyond the 5 o'clock mark, so we appreciate your responsiveness. I also want to make a couple motions. I think that the work that you guys do is extremely invaluable. You guys have demonstrated a tremendous amount of cost savings with the work being done in-house, and I think it merits to make some true considerations of some of the things that were not funded. So I'd like to make a motion to ensure that we fund, and I know a couple of my colleagues will make the others, but like the CLE training, I know how truly important that is. Office supplies, the publication stuff, I'm not sure why it was reduced, by 4,000 if you guys need it, because it helps you in your legal research. I know as an attorney, critical, especially when you guys are given assignments by all the folks up here and all the department directors on issues. I think that's critical. So if we can include, I guess, 6 through 9, also the paralegals for PRAs, you've demonstrated to us that, with the new change in law, there's going to be higher demand, more work, and obviously we are going to need the extra help so that we're diligent in getting the information out to the public. So I'd like to add that as well. And one of the other things that I'd like to do, I think hiring and retention of our attorneys is very critical, especially because we're competing with the private sector. And again, you guys have demonstrated it too. So I want to do the $100,000 for retention and promotion of Unit 2 employees. So those are part of my motion. So it is,
Are you adding B and F?
it's F, that one's F. And then I also added B. And then from the previous page, I added 6 through 9.
Thank you.
Could I actually request a copy of that motion, just to make sure that we get
Yeah.
everything? Thank you very much.
That motion has been seconded by Member Chavez. And we'll move, wow, my screen went blank. As I recall, Member Arias, you're next, followed by Member Esparza.
Thank you, Council President. On these, which ones did you leave behind? Couple of contact questions. Mr. City Attorney, can you walk me through your budget? I know, like, we just saw the IT budget yesterday, and their budgets are increasing, their staffing levels are increasing because they're charging departments more money for existing services or new services. Does your budget do the same thing to other departments? Do you charge and recover your costs for services from all the respective departments?
My understanding is, yes, throughout the budget, departments can be charged some of the cost of our office, cost allocation. We're general fund for the most part, but for example, a utility can also contribute ratepayer funds to cover some of the cost to the extent we're providing work for them too. So yes, I understand that some of our cost is distributed to other departments.
How much of your cost is recovered by charging other departments? Who would know that answer?
I assume it's budget.
I don't have the exact amount, but through the cost allocation plan, Council Vice President, a portion of their expenses then are recovered through non-general fund departments. But again, I don't have an exact amount.
Okay. Because, I'm trying to understand a couple of things in your presentation. On page 5, you note that the police department's request for services has gone down from 84 items to 43. I know as a city, the police department, represents the biggest liability, legal liability for the city, both in settlements and in requests for legal services. It's also my understanding that they have their own legal counsel.
No, that's us.
That's us. So they don't have any attorneys in-house?
No, we have lawyers in our office that are assigned to assist the police department, and 2 of them actually sit over in the PD offices because we ran out of room.
Got it. And who do they report to?
They report to our office.
To your office? So has the cost to the police departments gone up, given that their services have gone up?
Well, there are a variety of things that we do for the police department. The RLS numbers are typically contracts. Could be some labor items. But, for example, the municipal prosecutions, those are not handled through an RLS. Just the advice we get. There's a SWAT call. We're there to help provide advice. That's not through an RLS. Litigation, when we handle litigation for the police department, that's not an RLS also. So typically these are contracts or those kinds of review type items.
Yeah, what I'm trying to understand is, I know like in our council budgets, we have to absorb a higher cost for IT every year. We have to absorb a higher cost for rent and utilities every year in our respective budgets, which for us comes out of our infrastructure operation budgets because those haven't increased to keep up with the pace of cost. So where in our budgets do we pay for your services when we call for them, or are those just generally fund?
I think general fund departments, it doesn't make any difference, I think. I don't know if the cost allocation applies from general fund to general fund because it's all coming from the same place.
Council Vice President,
yes.
That's the key, is your office, as well as the other members, are under the general fund. City Attorney is under the general fund. So in essence, there isn't a direct ID billing because it's all part of the general fund.
Understood.
I think
Okay.
cost allocation is typically to the utilities, enterprises.
Got it. All right, I'll just make a motion to add item C as in cat, D as in dog, and E to your budget request.
That motion is seconded by Member Chavez. C, D, E, was that Member Arias? C, D, and E?
Correct.
Thank you.
It was C and E.
C, D, and E.
Well, D, I think we would need some more specifics. What would you like to do under D? It could be to add funds for expenses of code enforcement. I think last year you added $100,000 for code enforcement expenses. And then if it were investigators, then just tell us how many you would like to add.
You know what? Modify my motion to C as in cat, E as in Edward, and G. Not D. No, there isn't a specific amount. And I know that there was a motion earlier to relocate code enforcement under your purview, so that would be supportive of that motion also.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Council
You're
President.
welcome. Members, Esparza, it's your opportunity.
Yeah, sure. Council Vice President Arias, did you make a second motion on G, similar to my previous motion, or? Okay. I'd like to, first of all, Doug, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate the PowerPoint and the broken down line by line, the requests. I do want to make a motion for Part A here to remove the contingency for the $50,000 for the budget analyst. I believe that was a cost neutral proposal. Part A, yes. That's one motion in itself. And then Doug, I see here, I mean, your office does a lot when it comes to the code enforcement aspect for us already. When it comes to serving our offices, the 7 of us, I see you have here, you have the 4 law clerks and 2 legal investigators, right, which are separate from the paralegals from Councilmember Soria's motion. Which of those would be more helpful? You know, a couple of law clerks or the 2 legal investigators?
Well, they're all helpful. Legal investigators can do more than a law clerk. The legal investigators, it's a permanent position. They're out in the field. They can go check on properties. For example, when you all say, can you go check this property out, typically they will go out that day. And that's their job to do that kind of thing. Law clerks are helpful in the sense that they are also not restricted to asset. They can do anything we ask, so they're doing different functions. I think it's good to have a mix of both. If I had to choose, I think we have funding for some law clerks anyway, but I think a legal investigator would be more useful as far as the things that you would want.
Okay, well, on the page number 10, I want to make a motion for number 4, fund and authorize 2 additional legal investigators.
All those motions by Member Esparza were seconded by Member Chavez.
And then, last but not least, related to your note here on item G on the last page, I did want to make an amendment to my previous motion from a few days back. I submitted it in writing to the clerk's office. I'm not sure if it has to be read out loud. Clerk, if that's necessary, would you please?
I don't think we need to read it. Katie's prepared to read it if you would like, and we have copies for everybody.
I'm fine, yeah. But I did submit the amendment to that previous motion in writing.
It's simply the detail of implementing that.
Correct, yes.
And then the second agrees? The second agrees to the amendment to include the detail?
Yes, yes.
Member Soria seconded the amendment to item G.
That will conclude my my questions, comments.
Thank you very much, Member Chavez.
Doug, quick question on page 5 for the request for legal services.
Yes.
So you track these by year, and if you kind of look at what 2018 had, start from the top. So Public Works had 492 requests. 2019 is 362. I'm assuming that's up to date up until June.
This is through the end of May, and then the 2019 numbers these are on calendar years. And so we took the year to date and did it proportionally for an entire year, what it would be.
Oh, I see.
For the
Okay.
current year. The other numbers are actual numbers from those calendar years.
And then I think you had included in here the PRA requests. What were those compared last year to this year again?
PRA request last year, I'm not sure where we were last year over this current fiscal year. What I say, it's about 1,800. I can't remember what it was the year before. Do we have that handy? We can get it to you.
Oh, yeah, just get that to me. I just kind of want to get a reference on how much, the additional requests that we've been getting. I know you and I have spoken about that. So just to get a little better idea of what it looks like now and what it did before.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, screen is clear. You know, I've been in this business for over four decades. Started when I was 12, and the beat goes on. But with that time frame, I've been exposed to a lot of attorneys and a lot of firms and all that. And I think if you guys ever went out on your own, you'd be a top-notch firm in Fresno, honest to goodness. So you're that good individually and as a unit. So again, I've seen a lot, and I'm very, very impressed with how you handle your affairs, our affairs, the city's affairs, and all the legal issues that come before. So just thank you very much for all you do for us. Please continue to do that, at least for 1 year, 6 months, and 19 days.
Thank you.
All right. Member Bredefeld does have some.
Yeah, I just want to echo those comments. I think the city attorney's office does a great job, and you have lots of challenges and lots of different issues that you have to deal with, and I think you guys all do a superb job, and I'm very appreciative of all that you do every day.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and we'll move on to the city clerk's office.
Good morning. So I'm going to just take this opportunity to give you some more information about the city clerk's office. And one of the things that I really wanted to expound upon, Brianna, what did I do? Okay, so I want to expound on what the city clerk does. The office of the city clerk does, because a lot of times people think it's more of an administrative clerical position. However, our responsibilities is thousands of statutes and regulations exist to protect the democracy and provide a system of checks and balances, and it's the city clerk's responsibility to ensure compliance with these laws. The laws are complex, constantly changing and evolving, and we have to keep up with that. The city clerk, as a local official, must have the professional education, training, and knowledge necessary to understand and administer these laws. We're a very small office. We have a total of 5, including me, and we get a lot done. And the reason we get a lot done is because we've automated most of our processes. So in the past, where you had to go to a file folder to find a document, now it's in Laserfish, and you can just retrieve it and email it. Some of the roles that are included in the city clerk's office is we are the election official. We work with the county of Fresno to run our elections, and we are also the local legislation auditor. And that means any ordinances that you pass that impact our city code, we have to ensure the code gets updated so everybody has the same information. We also deal with political reform. We are the filing officer for campaign finances and a statement of economic interest, 700 forms. And all of that is electronic as well. Records management and archives is something else that we do. We have to preserve some of the records that are deemed permanent, and so the way we do that is to catch it on microfilm to make it accessible to the public easier, and as well as store it in certain boxes that are archival. Public inquiries or PRAs, I'll talk about that a little further in the presentation. And of course, we give City Council support with the agendas and the minutes. Some of the highlights that I wanted to talk about in the past year is we added 3 elements to our Granicus system. We added boards and commission, and we just recently, I think we have more training scheduled before we will actually implement that and set it out for the public, but it's a real fine system that allows us to generate reports and things on vacancies and attendance and all of that. We also added the e-comments and Minute Maker. And we also began tracking performance measures in our department. We haven't had that in a while, so I'll get into that too as well. And we completed the 2018 elections for City Council Districts 1, 3, 5, and 7, and also started the process for the special election for District 2. We began talks with departments regarding records inventories and records management, and finally the council did approve a resolution to implement the citywide records management program. Some of the things that we're going to be working on in the future, in the next fiscal year, is continuing to work with ISD to implement the electronic signatures for contracts. We're also going to work with the county clerk on the new election process, which is called the California's Choice Act. And in this particular scenario, there will be no more polls, and all of the elections will be either returned by mail, the ballots will be returned by mail, or you can go to a voting center, and you can go to any of those voting centers in the city of Fresno. And also a change is the primary election will now be held in March instead of June, beginning in 2020. And the 2020 election includes District 2, 4, 6, and the mayor. And it could also include some ballot measures. And just to give you an example of some of the data we captured, and this is all pertaining to our agenda, we had a total of 288 consent calendar items, 96 presentation, 108 timed items, general administration 126, council items 35, closed session 59, and supplements 88. And we're doing our best to stop supplements as well. And some of the things that I do want to highlight about the clerk's office is we are very current in meeting our timeline. So all the agendas that are posted is done in 72 hours or more in advance of the meeting. The City Council video and minutes and approved minutes are posted to our website the very next Friday after the Thursday meeting. And this year we had 91% of our economic interest filers file electronically as opposed to 85% last year. So we're making improvements there. We published 347 notices and publications, and that time to post these notices has gone down by approximately 5 minutes per posting due to our electronic kiosks outside City Hall. So we no longer have to go out there with paper, so that's an advantage. And we also processed 410 PRAs, and the average response time is 12 minutes per PRA. However, the older documents do require a longer time frame to get the research done. And our PRA is a little bit different from Duck's because a lot of times people just ask us for what we have on file that's public anyway, so that it doesn't really have to go through a review. It could be minutes or it could be an ordinance and things like that. Now, sometimes we will get a request that includes our department and another department, and in those cases we do forward them to the city attorney's office for additional help. And let's see. Finally, our request for the mayor's proposed budget this year, we did get approved for $7,900 in costs to our vendor for our municipal code. We're codifying more information, more ordinances, and so that cost is increasing. We did ask for a records management consultant. However, the rest of these were not funded. The records management consultant, a new position for a records supervisor to help implement that records management program. And we're constantly paying for the dais nameplates, which change whenever we have an election or a new council president, vice president. And that was not funded either. And also training, increased records management training. As I stated in the beginning of this presentation, this is complex information that we have to manage, and so the training is extremely important, and not only for myself and the assistant clerk, but also for our records manager. And that's all I have for today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. So, Member Arias, you are first up. Other than that, the screen is clear.
Thank you. Just a couple of clarifying questions to the city clerk. This past year, we're currently in a special election for District 2.
Yes.
Where does the money come from for the cost of the special election? Is that coming out of your budget, the council budget?
No, that comes out of the general city purpose budget. All the election costs are gathered together, and they're paid for and have been for some time out of the general city purpose budget. So it's not in her budget.
What budget tab is that under?
That is under the general city purpose budget. We're going to cover that, I think, we're going to cover that next.
Correct.
Yeah, we're going to cover that one next.
Okay. Couple of other questions. 65. The cost of, what's your top priority that you're requesting, given the direction and the goals that you've been given by the council?
The top priority would be the records management consultant and the records supervisor to get that program up and running. I have 5 people on my staff, including myself, so it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to do that without additional assistance. The management consultant would take a lot of work off of me by providing us with a template for training and policies and procedures. So that's what that would be for.
And what is a record management consultant? What is that exactly for the general public? What does that mean?
Well, that would be someone with expertise in records management. They probably have a certification, and they've done many businesses, private and local government, implementing training and policies and procedures for a records management program.
If the council wasn't to approve the position of the consultant, what's the liability for the city if we don't implement the record management process? Anybody can speak to it?
Yeah, Doug, you see any liabilities there?
Well, one of the consequences is that we would have a lot more records to look through if we don't manage the records and get rid of the older records pursuant to the schedule. As far as liability,
yeah,
I'm not aware of any risk as far as having to pay out a claim.
Like Doug said, it would help them out not to have to look through so many records because we're getting rid of the records when we should and not holding on to extra things we don't need to.
Is that something that you can bill different departments for? Because I mean, it's a need that every department has, right? Every department produces records that we have to maintain. So, budget director, is that something that the city clerk can charge back to the respective departments, or do we have to fund that through a general fund?
Well, if I may, we can. The city clerk's office, again, is much like the city attorney's office in that it is a general fund department, and it recovers its non-general fund activities or activities that are undertaken for departments that are not general funded through the cost allocation plan. So to the extent that the records management program is a citywide program and also serves non-general fund departments, that portion of the cost will be recovered by the general fund. But we have historically not charged general fund departments for general fund activities because it's an accounting loop, basically. It doesn't do anything. So, I mean, to the extent that we can, that will become a part of the clerk's operations and will be charged out through the cost allocation plan to all of the non-general fund departments in the city.
Yeah, and just to follow up to that, is there any particular reason why the city managers, the mayor's office didn't honor the request to fund the records management work?
I can't speak directly to that, but I can probably estimate that given the volume of requests on a citywide basis and our financial constraints, that decision was made. Much like the decision that was made to the city attorney's office. It was made for financial reasons and always has been.
All right. Well, I do appreciate that, but I do want to acknowledge that every department has seen a significant increase in their allocation to deal with MOU increases, non-MOU increases. The police department by itself has been increased by $12 million. So clearly there's money out there, and some things got prioritized. Records management seems to be a pretty mundane and routine requirement for city government. So with that, I'll make a motion to fund the consultant and the additional position for the records management work.
That was seconded by Member Soria. Anybody else? Are you finished? Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on this? I just had a question on the records management consultant and the records supervisor. That seems to be an overlapping, or you could maybe get 2 for 1 out of that.
Okay, so the difference between the two is the consultant would be there for a specific period of time to accomplish specific things, to give us the template to move forward throughout the city, to train people, and the record supervisor would be that person who's going to the different departments and implementing that training that the consultant laid out for us.
So that would be 1 year at 50,000?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as nameplates, you could just leave mine like it is for a year, 6 months, and 19 days.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. Appreciate your hard work and your contributions to the city of Fresno. Okay, now we'll go to the General Purpose Fund, your favorite and mine.
The General City Purpose Department budget starts on page B-65. Primary funding sources under this department is general fund, special revenue, as well as debt service. Overall budget is $51,231,800. It's an increase of about 2%. General fund budget is $10,681,900. It's a reduction of 13.1%. Total permanent FTE positions are 14.75, which is an increase of 1. And I also want to note that the department contains items of citywide in nature, not really department specific. Also, most of the debt service that the general fund contributes towards is housed in this department. Some of the key appropriations that have been established, and many are those that have been carried from the prior year. For example, one is the animal control contract. We're budgeted at $4,234,000. Also, there is a budget for Historic Preservation Mitigation Program. That grant program was approved by Council February 15, 2018, and incentivizes owners of historic structures to maintain and enhance historic features. Total appropriations for this program is $50,000. Also included is the Granite Park contract. That is budgeted at $150,000. We also included $25,000 for continued operational support for Fresno 311. There's also $111,400 for the Economic Development Corporation contract. It is in year 3 of 5, scheduled to end in fiscal year 2022. There's also $25,000 for the Fresno County Fair activity, which is included in the department's budget. I'd like to note, though, there is offsetting revenue that will come from the state parimutuel agreement. A couple of more items that we have is the homeless assistance, budgeted at $50,000. We have another $50,000 for parade support, and that's primarily offsetting part of the cost related to traffic control for these events. Two other items I'd like to point out is there's $25,000 for the summer internship, as well as $100,000 for the Youth Leadership Institute as well. As far as positions, again, I mentioned that it was at 14.75. That's budgeted in the for this year. And that's primarily associated with the Retirement Administrative Division, which is an internal service fund. They have requested a permanent position related to Senior Administrative Clerk, which is needed for essential support towards the Executive Assistant and Retirement Benefits Manager. Council President, that's my overall presentation.
Thank you very much. As always, a job well done. Member Soria, you have the first opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Council President. So a couple questions. I don't know who's going to answer them, but on the Historic Preservation Mitigation Program, Just wondering, how many projects a year are we funding with the 50,000? And is 50,000 even enough? I know that it seems like a very small amount, and when I talk to folks about the historic preservation, issues that arise, is that it's very costly. So 50,000, what does that get us? What have we seen in the past be funded?
I know that there is money left over from this current fiscal year. So I know that we are advertising the program, that there are folks taking advantage of it, but we did not spend the 50 this current year, so we're going to roll that over. But the program is picking up. We have a lot of applicants, and we can get you a tray memo on just how many. But
We know what kind of projects, or?
A lot of them are single family. I was just actually messaging with Dan Zach to. It can also be for rental property, commercial property, and single family residential. So we can get you. There's actually information on DARM's website about the program, so we can kind of summarize that and get a tray memo out
That
for
would
you.
be great, because if maybe we could get a little bit background. When did it start? I wasn't even.
Started as part of mitigation for Fulton, actually.
Okay.
So I think this is either the second or third year we've had it in general city purpose budget.
Okay. Yeah, if we could get that background, that would be great, and then to see what kind of projects are being funded and how we're promoting it. Because if we are setting aside 50,000, but we're not even spending, and you're saying that we're going to carry over the other dollars.
I think because it's just starting to pick up. So we formulated the program. The council just approved this past fiscal year, this current fiscal year, earlier. It was either earlier in 2019 or late in 2018, the program guidelines. So it took a while to get those developed. So that's why we're just getting up and running with the program.
Okay, perfect. Thanks on that. Did you have a follow-up?
Which item was that?
Oh, that one was on the historic preservation mitigation, page B67.
Okay. I've got another item I'd like to talk about when you're done, but thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, then the other thing that I wanted to raise, maybe for purposes of the council, I think it would be important to get an update on the animal control contract. We've had significant issues with SPCA. I know Laura's in the audience, and I know she's been working on this. My office has been kind of involved in at least trying to monitor what SPCA is doing.
It's actually on the agenda for this Thursday. So
okay.
Yeah,
But I think that it's valuable to start the discussion now, because we are asking the council to appropriate $4.2 million. So this contract keeps getting expensive, and the services keep getting worse. And
so I have Laura here to answer any questions. If
so,
you want to have the
I know that
conversation now.
it's going to be coming on Thursday, but just kind of an update to the council on, why the increase again.
Sure.
And any progress in looking at alternative situations.
Sure. So good morning, Council. Laura Merrill, Deputy City Manager. So as you mentioned, the item is on the agenda for next week for June 13th, and what it is, it's the third extension. As you may recall, in the past, we've brought similar extensions, sort of as-is extensions to continue the services of our current provider. We do currently have an open RFQ, a request for qualifications for animal control services. That closes on June 21st of this month. So the reason we're bringing the extension to council again is to provide for some time to review the new proposals and or if there are not proposals, to continue to negotiate either our current contract or to determine a different path forward. The increase, as you mentioned, is the minimum or the increase for minimum wage, and so that is all that the SBCA requested. It was about $250,000, I believe, increase from last year's budget.
How many proposals have we received so far into the RFQ?
As of right now, it closes on June 21st, and I have not received one yet.
Laura?
That's actually typical, though. A lot of folks wait till like the very last day, so I would not be discouraged by that.
That's correct. And we did do a longer period for this one. We did a 60-day period. We provided a deadline for people to submit their responses, and then so if anyone asked questions, we gave those out. I believe last week we sent them out to the entirety of the folks that had participated. We did reach out, send the RFQ out to anyone we can think of in terms of groomers, veterinaries, anyone in the animal industry in the local area. We went ahead and contacted them and sent them the RFQ as well to try to be as successful as possible in getting out to as many agencies.
So forgive me, I haven't gotten to my my council binder reading because of this reading on the budget. But how long of an extension are we asking for?
It's a 1-year extension, so that'll get us, well, technically it's 2 years. So it's a 1-year extension with the option to administratively extend it for another year. So that would be through 2022. July of 2022.
Ms. Merrill, I lost my train of thought. That doesn't happen too often.
You know, Member Soria has the floor,
Yes.
but
Thank you, Council President. I was letting them chime in since it was on the same item. Yeah, I will tell you that I'm very concerned that we're even providing an option for renewal. One, renewing it for 1 year, and then even having the option to renew for another year. I will not, and I will say it publicly, I am not going to be supportive of that contract because I don't even want it to be renewed 1 more year. The complaints that I get from my constituents are never ending. The services haven't improved, and it's like she doesn't hear the message that we constantly tell her when we meet with her. And so
We completely understand and feel your pain, okay?
No,
But we don't have an option. That's why we're doing the RFP, so we can have this conversation on Thursday. We need at least a year, you know, and
we've been
there
talking about this, though, for...
I get that, but we don't have anyone else as a backup. We don't have another option. And Laura can speak to it on Thursday, but I believe there's a provision in the contract that we can terminate it should the RFP be successful and we find another provider. We don't have to have the entire year. Is that correct?
That's correct. So either party has a 30-day without cause termination.
And if I may just suggest that Thursday is going to be a 10-hour council meeting, and spending 3 hours on SPCA is probably not going to work for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can have them come and meet with us, or staff meet with us before Thursday, that would be helpful. And two, on minimum wage increase, I'm always hearing that as a result of minimum wage, they need more money. But when you look into their staffing, very few folks are at the minimum wage level because they've been there for so many years. So I'd like to see the backup evidence to suggest that a $200,000 minimum wage is justified.
Sure. In your agenda packet, there should be the detail of that, which includes the breakdown per employee, their levels, and all of that. And so I did reach out to your offices to request a meeting if you would like it, so I'm happy to do so. We can work with Yvonne to get it on your calendars whenever you're available.
And if you would bring the SPCA along, because I think at the bare minimum, the council doesn't have to approve the minimum wage increase. We can approve the extension, but not give them more money for a poor performance.
Got it.
I don't even know if you guys are going to have enough time. You have like 1 more day. That agenda package is ridiculous. I'm just saying, given budget hearings. Okay, so the next thing, thank you so much, Laura. The next thing I have a question about is the homeless assistance. I do see H in the back. I don't know if you're in charge of this or who's in charge of this. There's a total of $50,000 that is budgeted for continued development and implementation of a multi-agency comprehensive plan. Can you speak to, I'm assuming you guys are working on something and therefore you guys need additional dollars. Where is this at? How much money have we spent already? And any of the dollars that we received from the state, can that be utilized rather than using general city purpose money?
So the funds that are set aside, the $50,000 that's set aside, is designed to be our contribution along with the county and other institutions to the Street to Home initiative, which is putting together a collective impact structure that will maximize our community's capacity to address homelessness long term. In terms of your question related to HEAP, those HEAP dollars are all committed to 6 different areas. One of them is program administration. The other 5 are very specific service areas that you all approved in an earlier council meeting.
So how much did you say we've spent already for the comprehensive plan? Or is
Nothing.
Nothing. So
No.
this is going to be it
Right.
for it. What is the goal?
The goal is
Like-
to connect public and private resources throughout our community for a more effective set of outcomes in terms of reducing homelessness. So what hasn't been done in the past is consistently connecting city, county, state, and federal resources with philanthropic, religious, and faith-based hospital and business resources. Communities that do that have a much better success rate in terms of reducing homelessness.
Are we following like another city's model? Did they do this? And so that's why we're taking this idea from?
Yeah, the bigger idea, council member, it has to do with collective impact, which is a well-regarded approach to complex urban problems like homelessness. So the idea of creating a backbone organization that aligns, that's lean. We aren't talking about creating a huge new bureaucracy, but that and what we've seen leading up to this is remarkable collaboration with city and county and continuum of care, housing authority, and a network of homeless service providers. The HEAP funding is actually giving us practice in moving in that collaborative direction.
Mm-hmm. So who gets this money?
That would be a new nonprofit called Street to Home, and those resources we've already received additional funding through the Kaiser Foundation to help fund it. We have commitments from the Housing Authority and the county to help fund this new initiative, and we're rolling it out in conjunction with the homeless subcommittee that includes Council Member Chavez, Arias, and Bredefeld.
Has the subcommittee approved the Street to Homeless initiative?
We're building it, and so that was money from the carryover that was set aside in anticipation that the city would want to make a commitment to this initiative.
So are these dollars contingent upon that vote and the approval of the council in order to be expended for the Street to Home?
I would say so, in principle, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a specific connection to it, but certainly the goal is to have a very strong, unified voice from the city to address homelessness that would parallel the voice from the county especially. And you're going to be receiving on the 20th a set of 14 priorities that the subcommittee and the mayor worked out with the Board of Supervisors to establish the foundation for the Street to Home initiative.
Okay, perfect. Those were all the questions that I had, and I guess at that time we'll discuss, the details of the Street to Home initiative.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Arias had a couple more questions. Then we'll go to Member Bredefeld, Member Chavez, Member Esparza.
This seems to be the location where there's some petty cash and kind of special projects being funded out of. Can somebody walk me through what the value of giving the Economic Development Corporation $100,000 is, given that we fund our own Economic Development Department?
So,
Because at some point, we have to start subtracting from all these motions.
Council approved, I believe it was a 5-year agreement last year for the EDC, and it's to help with retention and expansion of businesses in the Fresno area. And so Leanne Eager was here to speak about that at the time. And Kelly, I don't know, Kelly, is there anything else you wanted to say? We work closely. Leanne does a lot of work to bring businesses here to Fresno, and then works in conjunction. Are you guys I wanted to make sure you were listening.
No, I'm fully listening.
Okay.
I'm listening for an answer.
Then
to
she
the
would bring
question.
those to the economic development director, and then we would work with them to land certain deals and what have you here in Fresno. Kelly, is there anything else that because I know you meet with EDC often.
We meet every 2 weeks. Their contract is to do business expansion, retention, and also bringing in new businesses. And they attend a lot of trade shows on our behalf, taking our information about the city of Fresno to these trade shows, just fulfilling in that capacity. They also answer a lot of requests for information from the state, and I know the EDC is here if you have questions for them, but answering RFIs from the state and other sources. They do a lot of work with other EDCs throughout California and throughout the Valley to promote the region as a whole as well. So they offer a lot of services to us. We have such a limited staff here. So
I understand that, but ultimately the council approved giving them more than $500,000 over a 5-year period. Can you clearly articulate what we've gotten in return for those dollars just in the last year? And then part of my initial question was, what's the distinct difference between the $500,000 we give them versus the full staff that we have doing economic development?
If I can speak to once EDC brings somebody in that's a potential employment opportunity or a business that wants to relocate here. So then it becomes our economic development director and Kelly who walks them through the process here with the city and kind of shepherds the project through, make sure that they get whatever incentives that we may have on the books, making sure that we're working through all the processes that are necessary with Public Works and DARM and entitlements and the whole bit. So that's when a lot of, I want to say, hand-holding happens to land that business here in Fresno. And then Will, do you mind speaking to the agreement? And then also, I know that other cities within Fresno County and Fresno County pays the EDC as well. So this is not an uncommon practice.
And I'm less interested in who else pays for this service. What I want to know clearly and distinctly is, what have you done for us in the last year that justifies giving you $100,000?
Absolutely. I think those are fair questions. Will Oliver, Director of Business Services with the Fresno County Economic Development Corporation. As Wilma and Kelly mentioned, we work very closely with City of Fresno staff, both with your economic development team as well as others through the planning and development process. Over this past year, we responded to 65 leads that came through our office through multiple sources. That came from the state of California through GoBiz, through the Central Valley Economic Development Corporation, which we are members of. That's an 8-county comprehensive economic development organization. Through Team California, which we as an organization are members of, as well as direct leads. Half of those were made just directly to our office. Obviously, the city of Fresno is the largest seat in the county. It has the vast majority of inventory, buildings, and space to respond to those needs. So the majority of our efforts and our work is largely in the city of Fresno territory here. As part of this contract, we have so first I'm going to talk more about the attractions. I think a good example of that, as far as a recent company and the bang for the buck, is Universal Meditech. That is a company that contacted the EDC in 2017. It's a medical device manufacturer of in vitro diagnostic devices. They were looking at locating a California headquarters. They are a Chinese-owned firm looking to establish their place in the U.S. market. So we worked with that company, worked in tandem with your staff, getting them through the process, starting with site selection, making sure that we had several available buildings for them to consider, incentives, meeting workforce availability, and ultimately decided to locate here. So some of those incentives included California Compete Tax Credit, $360,000, PG&E's economic development rate was a 30% reduction in electricity costs, and alignment with our new employment opportunities program, where they'll be hiring folks from the Welfare to Work program. So through that process, we worked very closely with City of Fresno staff. They had to go through the development permitting process and ultimately locating 60+ thousand square feet in the South Fresno industrial submarket. I think that's a good example of an attraction client coming through the EDC, helping them from A to Z through the process. In terms of expansion and retention, I think...
So if you can pause there, that lead was in 2017, right?
Correct.
Which is, it's fair to say that we paid you for that. in the 2017 allocation. You indicated that this last year you processed 65 leads. Of those, how many of them have resulted in actual businesses locating to Fresno?
Well, it's not black and white. It happens within a year time. They make a decision. It depends. It varies.
Okay. So it's fair to say that it takes multiple years for you to...
Absolutely.
Okay, so this last year, how many businesses have you succeeded in locating to the city of Fresno?
So I consider this last year Universal Meditech as opening their doors. That was a very big one. We've had several local expansion projects as well that we've worked closely with the city of Fresno on. One is Value-Wide Beverage and helping them with their new 225,000 square foot facility. We worked with them early in the process, brought that to city staff. They were good candidates for the I-Defer program, which is an incentive that we do promote. So allow them to have good expansion. It's going to add more jobs. As part of our $50,000, what we've also focused on is just expansion and retention. So 80% of job generation, according to studies, shows that typically occurs with existing businesses. So we have a staff member that all he focuses on the city of Fresno. We utilize our staff economist and his analytical tools to do analyses just focused on businesses poised for growth or on a decline. And so we've worked on that subsequent outreach with the city of Fresno staff that has allowed for multiple successes among existing businesses as well. So if you like, council member, I'd be happy to prepare a report in terms of the attraction wins, whether it be in the e-commerce field. We're working with a e-commerce client. They're actually a home goods supplier. E-commerce is a growing component of their business. They're privately owned. They're headquartered in Georgia. We were very close to reaching a deal there here in Fresno. They're looking at adding initially 70 positions. Worked very closely with your staff. I can't disclose their name. So there's multiple projects that we've had, whether it be Amazon Last Mile, which is a component to their operations here, Universal Meditech, or others. I'd be happy to provide that subsequent information.
What I would like is before this council votes on a final budget for EDC to give us a clear list of projects that they have successfully either located to Fresno or help expand. I think it's important every department here has to demonstrate their performance to the city. Absolutely. Before we approve additional allocation. I think EDC should have to do the same thing. So I'm hoping we get something in the next couple of days that demonstrates that we should continue giving you over $100,000 a year. And I'm still unclear. I know you guys do the recruitment part, essentially, and then that gets handed off to our internal folks. Our internal economic development staff, aren't they also doing expansion and retention of businesses? Why do we need both an outside provider and an internal provider? Mayor, of course, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning.
Welcome, Mayor Brand.
We have two people in economic development. I believe there's 25 or 26 people at EDC. One of the things they do, for example, is economic profiling. We don't have the resources to go out and do a lot of stuff they can do. So instead of simply just attending a trade show and hope somebody shows up, you give them a card and they come back, they profile companies. There's maybe a company that's located in the eastern side of the United States. We identify a need on the West Coast for, say, e-commerce distribution, warehouse distribution. They bring those leads in. So it augments what we're doing. If you look at the results in the past 3 years, I think 5,000 jobs. Later, if you want to talk about economic development, I'll go over in detail the different companies beyond the Amazon, Ulcers, and Gaps, numerous companies, both existing companies expanding, new companies coming in. They also help us in job fairs, employment, workforce, a lot of different things. And I think for $100,000, you get your money's worth.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, if we can get that information in the next couple of days, that would be very helpful. I do have some questions related to the Fresno County Fair. Who can speak to that? What do we give them $25,000 for?
Let me, if I may, the EDC, I've been involved with that as well. I can confirm the things that Will and the mayor have said. They're very active, their meetings, they have a lot of different participants, membership, and they all work toward that common goal. And honestly, I think $100,000 is a steal for the city of Fresno with all the effort they've done in combination and really leading the economic development in our city. As opposed to having our own unit of that size, nature, quality, and ability. So I'm happy to be part of it, and I've seen you in action. You guys are great, and Again, 100,000 is a steal.
I'd have
Thanks.
to concur with Councilmember Capriolio. I've had a good experience working with Will. Besides those direct efforts that with the administration, he's kept me apprised and had several meetings with me on my economic tools of interest on the EIFDs and the CREAs, the opportunity zones. So we stay in touch on those efforts as well.
Good. And we can just get for the record performance so that the public understands why we're giving $100,000 to the ADC. You know, everybody has to justify, including every consultant, lobbyist that we hire in every department, the resources that are being requested. So thank you for coming. The Fresno County Fair, $25,000. What's the purpose of giving them $25,000?
Councilmember Chavez, do you want to?
Yeah, so this is
that
a
your pet
request that I
project?
had from the horse racing proceeds that we have with the fairgrounds. We've done this for, I think, 2-3 years, and it's offset, and I'm actually going to be making a motion because I think the Fresno Fairgrounds is a partner. They're actually going to be, I might as well make the motion now. They're going to be actually helping us with some green space there on the corner of Maple and Butler, tripling the size of green space with the city of Fresno, helping pay for some of the water there as well. And so they've been a great partner, and this is our way of supporting them.
So does this
I'll
money go
second that
towards
motion.
improvements of the offsite improvements of the fairgrounds or internal improvements?
No, so repeat the question?
Where does the $25,000 go towards? What does it pay for?
That goes back to the fairgrounds.
To pay for operations, maintenance of the fairgrounds,
All of the above.
all the above?
Right.
Is this also going to be used for the upcoming statue of Chief Dyer?
No, I don't think that's part of the
No?
part of the budget.
Just wanted to
Matter of
make
fact,
sure
I
we're
want to
clear
make
about
sure it's not part of the budget.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Chavez.
Just to clarify, I did make that motion to help with the watering of that parcel there, that the fairgrounds is going to be a partner with us.
And I did second it.
Okay. Parades,
Excuse me.
50,000.
Council
Go ahead.
Vice President, I'm sorry, that motion, could it be?
Yeah, that was 30,000 from Department of Utility DPU for the watering of the parcel in the corner of Maple and Butler, that the fairgrounds will enter into a partnership with the city of Fresno providing green space. Got it?
Thank you.
Parades. Can somebody give me the breakdown of what parades we support and at what cost? I know we allocate 50,000 for parades, but what parades exactly
I
are?
don't have that list handy. Laura, do you, off the top of your head? And this is basically our share of the traffic control based upon the item that council approved last year. And I know it's veterans, Martin Luther King.
Correct. So council approved a resolution that designated certain parades, sort of the designated grandfathered routes. That does include veterans, the MLK route, Juneteenth, Pride Parade. I think there's about 8. I can get you the total list, but those are the parades that are supported by that 50,000.
Mardi Gras, Cesar Chavez.
Okay.
Yes. Chinatown, I think, is the last one
The
that I was
Chinese
missing.
New Year Parade.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Merrill. Yes, it is. And the Food Expo, it looks like this is going to be, we're going to the 9th or 10th year of the Food Expo. At any point, I recall the Food Expo was supposed to be kind of a standalone initiative after the city would help start it up. We're going to the 9th year at $62,000. Are there any plans to, be independently funded and operated based on the success that we've had thus far?
I have Amy Fuentes here in the audience to speak to Food Expo and the success. And this was just, again, an item that council approved a couple years ago, just showing the continued commitment to the Food Expo and everything that it brings to Fresno and the Valley, and promoting of locally grown and produced foods. And Laura and Amy, I know you can speak for hours, but if you want to just package up a couple things and answer his question, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, council members. The Food Expo will actually be going into its 9th year. We have actually expanded to become the California Food Expo, which is why we are still asking for support from the city as we continue to expand our efforts and really to position the city of Fresno as the food leader in the state and a great opportunity for economic development staff to come in and talk to all of these food or beverage companies that are coming in from around the state who may want to expand, relocate. But as we are going through this expansion, the city's continued support is vital to us. But it is absolutely our intention to eventually, as we grow, not have to depend on the the financial resource from the city, although it never, ever hurts.
How much of the 62,000 does that represent of your full budget for the Food Expo?
Little less than, or a little more than 10%. We have an operating budget of about $550,000.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
And my last question around permanent senior administrative clerk for the retirement office. Why does that appear on this budget versus, doesn't the pension system pay for those costs?
No, the retirement office is paid for by the two trust funds, but since their operations are funded through the city, their employees are city employees, they're funded, they're gathered together and they're shown as a city division. And since they don't impact any other operating department, they're placed in general city purpose, just for purposes of reporting and presentation.
Got it. So it's not being paid by the general fund. It's just
No,
a
it is
reflection
not.
of the position.
No, it is straight. It is paid for by both the trusts.
Perfect. And then just my last question before we go to Councilmember Butterfield. Granite Park, it shows up on this budget line. Why isn't it in the parks budget since it's a park?
I believe because this is a pass-through payment. This is not really a parks item. It is a payment to the contractor, I believe, to maintain the park and to run the program. So it's not really a park issue. It is a citywide issue, and it is a contract that the city has entered into, and so it's placed here for administrative purposes.
But isn't it funded by the general fund?
It is funded by the general fund.
So wouldn't it appear every other contract we have for community centers who run our parks are under the parks budget, right?
It's kind of the same, if you wish, as SBCA. It's just really a matter of where you want to put it. It doesn't really have an impact. It's just easier for us to track it, and since it is not strictly a Parks Department responsibility, but a responsibility of the administration, it's just easier to place it in GCP, but we can put it anywhere you want.
Okay, it's fine. It's just it just doesn't. It's not a parade. It's not a food expo. It's not a homeless thing. It's not an animal control. It's a park, and I think it needs to, as much as we can, to reflect what it is and where it should go. I'm sure it started here because at one point it was initiated by the administration, but eventually it needs to go into the category where it's actually reflective of its operation. But with that, thank you, and I think Councilmember Butterfield.
Thank you. Can somebody speak to the Youth Leadership Institute and the $100,000 for that?
I believe that is part of the arrangement for the Youth Council, and that money is spent for a consultant to assist them as they go through their program, their training, and their events. I believe, though, that I would defer to District Council District Member Soria for additional information.
Councilmember Soria's office oversees that. I apologize for
No,
interrupting
I'm
you.
sorry. Of course.
Well, I mean, the thing for me is I'd like to understand when we say that they advise the council on issues of concerns to Fresno's youth. We talk about accountability. I'd like to see that a little bit more in terms of the accountability of what they're advising the council on in terms of youth. And I'd like to know also whether other cities spend money on a Youth Leadership Institute, and can this be done without spending money? I mean, there are people who donate their time. I have no problem with the fact that we appoint youth to this and they participate and provide information and do things that are educational for themselves. I like that idea a lot. I just don't know that we need to be spending $100,000 for it when there's such great need in the city. Maybe Councilmember Soria can provide some information on that.
Before
But I'd like
she
to know.
speaks to Councilmember Butterfield, so they actually were helpful when they were advising us with regards to the conversation about the concentration of liquor licenses in the city, tobacco products, and they've also been helpful with the placement of cannabis dispensaries that the city is going through as well. So that's some of the work that they've been doing, but also that they've been organizing and helping with some of the community cleanups out in some of the neighborhoods as well. So just wanted to put that.
Well, I support that. I have no problem with any of that. I just don't know that we need to be spending $100,000 for a consultant to work with them on that. Can we do that without spending $100,000? That's what I'm wondering. That's the question. Is there value? I think there is value. The issue is, do we need to spend $100,000? Go ahead, Councilmember.
The answer is yes, unless your staff is willing to take it on. It's a full-time gig in terms of staffing, preparing. When they meet pretty regularly as a group. They have their public meetings as well. I think that it is a small token of our city's appreciation for the young people and giving the young people a seat at the table. In regards to the policymaking process, they've been instrumental in supporting some of the things that, or not even supporting, proposing some of the changes that council has made and that the mayor has supported, like even the summer internship program. They brought that to and have been talking about the need for jobs for young people, the liquor license things, the issue with the Wi-Fi and the buses. So they are working hand in hand with the city on those types of issues. And so I think that it is a great program that is going to prepare the next generation of leaders here in our city.
Well, I support the program. I don't know that that program solely is going to generate the next leaders. I think we got plenty of next leaders without being in the program. And I have no problem with youth having a seat at the table. I support that as well. And if you would like me to find somebody to organize that, to run that program without spending one dime, you're on. I'm there. Let's cut the $100,000. Let's put it towards something that we truly need. And I will assure you that we will find somebody to run that program without $100,000 being spent. So with that, I'd like to make the motion to cut that, and I will find somebody to run that program without expense.
I will tell you, it's interesting that you say that, because the Boys and Girls Club just pulled out of 2 parks because they can't support doing work in our neighborhoods, because they do need the city to step up and be a partner. So I will absolutely not support that motion until you can go out and bring someone that has a track record of delivering. Then I will be happy to have further discussion, but at the moment I cannot support your motion. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that is what I would propose, that we take that $100,000 and put it towards things that we need, such as CSOs, 911 dispatchers. You want to put it for something related to maintenance of parks, I'm happy to do that. But we can do this, and again, I want to be clear. I support engaging the youth, having them be involved with the city. I just think we can do it without spending the $100,000. So I guess there's not a second for that.
I was going to suggest that if you get a breakdown of the budget, maybe that'll answer some of the questions that you have about the program and where the money goes. I'm not sure.
No, I know where the money goes. It goes for consultants and spending money to operate the program. So I just don't think it's a good use of the money, and I think we can do it without spending the money. But if that's not the will of the council, fine. That's not the will of the council. I'd like to ask HBs on the homeless assistance, the $50,000.
Just a reminder to my colleagues, the Council Subcommittee on Homeless has not approved yet the Homes to Street initiative. That is going to be a conversation that we'll have to take on at some point, but it looks like this money is there as a set aside in case we do that.
Yeah. Well, I think Councilmember Soria was asking very pertinent questions about this $50,000. So I'm not quite sure I understand how we're spending this $50,000. We've got this millions of dollars that we've just gotten from the state. We in the county are working together on these 14-point plans, which I support. What's the $50,000 for?
By the way, the $50,000, council member, came from last year's budget. It was budgeted last year. It's just carrying over to this year.
Which was prior to getting the $3.1 million.
Right. The $3.1 million is specified for emergency homeless operations. And so the HEAP funding, and there's actually what Mayor Brand was successful in doing with the other Big 11 mayors was pulling down $14 million for our use here in the community. 3.1 came to the city, and about 9 and some change came to the COC, and there'll be another wave of that funding. I think to answer your question, the purpose of these funds, which are minimal compared to these other designated funds, is to set up an organization that basically is a partnership that will have an MOU between the city and the county, the COC, the Housing Authority, where the accountability and the authority for setting policy on how homeless service dollars are spent is combined so that we can have more focused activity that will actually drive down outcomes. And as you recall, Chief Dyer, when he was here, I think not this year's budget hearing, but last year's, when asked what is the impact of homelessness on patrol officers, he estimated that 10% of a patrol officer's time is spent dealing with homelessness. So the impact on the city is massive. As you know, as a council member, you get businesses and residents raising quality of life issues all the time. This $50,000 is simply an investment that the city makes alongside these other institutions to set up a collaborative structure that is a backbone for future homeless spending.
But aren't we doing that with our subcommittee when we're meeting with county officials? I mean, we're doing exactly what you just described. And we're not spending $50,000 to do that, right? I think, no. What we're doing is generating the political will between these institutions to come together and actually do something. But we need an entity that is going to be able to link and align those resources across multiple agencies, multiple complex budgets. Right now, the COC gets about $9 million a year in terms of homelessness. Add to that another $9 million with HEAP. We've got a second generation of HEAP funding coming down to the city. And the reason why it's a great investment for the city is because we are at that table where we are the smaller player. Okay. We aren't a social service agency. This gives us the opportunity to leverage all the homeless dollars across multiple agencies in our community. Okay. Thanks, H. Yeah.
Next would be Member Chavez.
Thank you. And then just really quickly, I know H just spoke about that, and I don't have any questions on that, but we do have to have a conversation as a subcommittee on what the homeless services are going to look like for the city of Fresno. I know that the governor just approved the budget, and we're slated to receive additional funding, and we're trying to get that plan. I know Member Bredefeld and Member Arias will be very engaged in that, and then we'll bring that to council for consideration. Got two, let's see here. Will left already from the EDC? Okay. Just for Member Arias, as we were having that conversation, and I want to put it on the record that EDC has been very helpful. I know you asked for specific projects. One was the modern custom fabrication over on Jensen that actually retained that business. I think they were displaced by high-speed rail, moved into the south side of Jensen. And then also they are currently working on a market study for the Kings Canyon Ventura corridor, as well as helping us with some opportunity zone strategic plans. And I think they're going to actually be working in District 3 as well. And then just want to make two quick motions. Make sure that we get those in the hopper. I want to motion to place for consideration $40,000 for the Fresno Historic Society. We've done that in the past. This is their 100-year celebration. I know they have some partnerships with our schools, and I think that'll be helpful. And then also want to make one last motion. I want to, this is more of a direction for staff to help with the gap funding that the Cesar Chavez Foundation project has on Kings Canyon. They're very close to providing 135 units, but I believe they need about 500,000, and give staff direction on finding that either through CDBG or home dollars, HUD dollars, general fund, whatever seems more appropriate on that.
Seconded by Member Soria. Does that conclude your?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Esparza, you're next.
Yes, I had questions on the RDA money, the debt repayment money that we're receiving. I'm not sure who's going to answer these questions. I'll just throw them out there. So on the RDA debt repayment, how much was that this year?
I believe it was 3.2?
From the RDA?
Yes.
3.4.
3.4.
3.4, okay. So I see here that, I was just reading the budget, that it pretty much got soaked up into the general fund this year. How is that different from past years?
That was direction from council last year, that money be redirected, because initially, when we started that repayment, or we began to receive that repayment, it was directed by the will of the council to the reserve. Last year, there was a motion made and approved that redirected that money into the general fund, and so that's where that money is going now.
Okay.
And just clarification, initially in 2015, that actually was a recommendation made by the former mayor, Swearingen, and then the council did approve using those dollars to support the reserve at the time. And I think that we've reached the reserve goal a lot earlier because of the 13th month payment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the 13-month payment that this council decided to put towards the reserve last budget.
And council, I would point out that pursuant to state law, I think it's 20% of those funds must be allocated for in our affordable housing fund.
Legal counsel, does the previous council's direction apply to this council, or can we change that direction?
You can change it for future budgets, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I previously made a motion for $1.2 million in affordable housing funds, and my idea behind that $1.2 million was a portion of what would have been the RDA debt repayment, and allocating some of that money towards housing. But I see here it was already soaked up into the general fund, so I did make that additional motion. I'm done. Thank you.
Do we have a second on that?
What was
Your motion?
No, it wasn't. It was not a.
It was just a comment.
Yeah, it was just a comment about my previous motion and sort of my motive behind that calculation.
I heard motion, so.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and Member Soria has some closing comments as well. So on B68, we have the Food Expo and a budget of $62,500. Does that money include the cost of the exhibit hall?
No, that does not include the cost of the exhibit hall.
How do we fund the exhibit hall costs? Or is it waived, or?
I believe it must be covered by their overall operating budget that they lease from the convention center. But yeah.
Thank you, guys. 2 times 1 day. Actually, we have a separate contract with the city that allows us to use one of your credits per year. We do pay for all of the hard costs that for the convention center, so we do have a bill from them, but I think it's just the actual rent credit that the city gets so many of a year. So we had a 5-year contract that goes from 2016 through 2020.
And the amount of the rent credit per year, if you do?
Not to exceed $40,000.
Council President, if I just may interrupt, when are we going to hear the convention center presentation, since they didn't show up the last time?
We did that.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, you did at 1 o'clock on Monday.
So can we just get a list of all the credits, all the freebies that they're giving away to people based on our contract?
Yes, we can get you that.
Convention center? Yes. Is that possible, manager, assistant manager?
Yeah, Jane said yes. We'll get you a list of credits and who's using those.
And then while you're here, I was interested in a report on the job creation and sales. The last paragraph indicates that expansion and hiring new employees for the city of Fresno because of their connection to expanding buyers and the value they receive from being in the founding food industry partner of Fresno Food Expo. Are there any statistics to verify that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It says here that they've have helped expand and hire new employees in the city of Fresno because of the expanding opportunities provided by the Food Expo. So that's a general statement. I'm wondering if there's any statistics that verify the job creation, the sales.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, JD Food expanded over the past 18 months, and their choice to stay in Fresno was largely because of their participation with the Food Expo and being one of the founding partners. They hired, I believe, somewhere between 15 to 20 new employees at their brand new built facility.
That's fantastic news. That's excellent.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Member Chavez says it's 34 actually.
Oh, well, fantastic, even better.
Yeah. Anybody else like to add employees? Is there a report, though, or do you have an annual report that indicates the successes of this show?
I can absolutely provide it to you.
Okay,
we
great.
do not get exact percentages from businesses, as a lot of times it is proprietary, but I can absolutely send over some examples for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Will do.
Good job. On the summer internship, on same page, B68, is this internship program longer than 8 weeks? And the second question is, can the council be notified well in advance of this to allow us to engage in outreach in our respective districts? It seems like we get the information when the game is over.
Yeah, I think that's kind of led by the personnel department. So I think we kind of touched on it during their presentation, but I think that you make some great comments in terms of in advance, because sometimes the window is way too short, and so our folks don't know. So I think that we probably, in our office, is happy to meet maybe with you guys and then personnel to try to see how we can improve that. But I think that there is room for improvement.
Excellent. Okay, let me know and we will join you or participate.
Yeah, and I also mentioned in one of my previous motions that maybe looking as a year-round, because, you know, I know that you guys have young people in your office year-round, so maybe not constraining it to the summer months would be great.
Good, I appreciate that. On the next page, we talked about a moment ago, the permanent senior administrative clerk. Last year, didn't we approve a permanent account tech? I believe we did at $42,900. Is this another person to assist that person?
No, this is a position for the retirement office, and it is to enhance customer service at the retirement office. I would point out that this is not a general fund position. This is paid for by the trust funds.
Okay, but was there one approved last year? Do you recall?
Yes. Rob is telling me that you did.
Okay, good. Hopefully that's working out as we expected. Another question I have is on land acquisition. I didn't see it in last year's budget, a request for $250,000. Where does this $250,000 come from? Is it savings or rollover?
I believe that's a rollover.
It is.
It is a rollover?
It's a rollover.
Yes.
And rollover
because it was in last year's budget.
Okay. And why are we rolling it over? We got land we're going to acquire, or
there was property that we were looking at for economic development purposes. There is, in particular, there is Lot 2, which is part of the parking lot that the county owns. There's a parking lot basically at Tuolumne and Fulton that we own a portion of, the county owns a portion of, so there was an opportunity for economic development or housing or another type of project there. So there's that and a few other odds and ends that we were looking at for economic development.
Can you repeat that again? I wasn't aware of.
So we had some money set aside in last year's budget that's rolled over right now because there were opportunities to purchase land for economic development, housing opportunities, et cetera. I believe at one point there was money in the budget to help with South Stadium. The two skinny buildings at Fulton and Inyo, there is, we had money set aside to purchase the county's portion, or at least make an offer in the county's portion of parking lot 2, which is generally located at Broadway and H south of Tuolumne. And so this money was just rolled over to give us opportunities for land acquisition, for development opportunities, basically.
So if it wasn't used last year, are you intending to use it this year?
That is our goal. That's why we included it in the budget.
And if it doesn't occur, what happens to the money? Where does it go back to?
Well, then we will either...
Goes back to the general fund.
Right, it goes back to
It's
the
general fund dollars?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it would be reprogrammed next year for something else.
If we can have a sit-down specifically on that project and that proposal, because it looks like we're going to have to at some point make some cuts based on all these motions, and I want to see how viable you guys' plans are for that option, or not.
Okay, I'm happy to meet with you.
Thank you. Over coffee.
Did you say over coffee? I assume you're buying?
Yes.
Okay.
Let the record show.
Well, let the record show that I'll make a motion that if that money is not spent by this time next year, that would be general fund dollars to the multi-generational center. Seconded by Member Chavez.
Let the record show you're getting a little greedy there.
Sorry? Oh, there's a $9 million mark we need to achieve to make this process work. And now I'm looking at page 59, line item document. Page 59 on the little book. All right. On 53,302 consulting, is the consulting going to actually be identical to this year's budget at $1 million plus? How do we calculate that?
It appears so. That is a line item that, in essence, holds the citywide consultants for the muni services, which is our sales and property tax consultant. We also have money in there for the state and federal lobbyist, and we also have money in there for the cost recovery systems. It's a small nominal amount that's also put in there because we have somebody that manages the SB 90 program from the state. And then I believe we also have money in there for the deferred compensation, the administration of that. So the amounts in that category have not changed from last year. And so that's why it is exactly the same as it was last year.
I've just been noticing some, to me, substantial increases on special services / tech 53402. It's an increase of $217,000.
That's the SPCA contract.
Which one?
The
53402 page.
The specialized
59.
services tech, the 53402. That is where the payments to for animal control are placed.
While they're working that out, I'd like to make a motion to cut the state and federal lobbyists from the budget.
I'll second that. What about the state lobbyists?
Both, state and federal.
Oh, both. I'll second that.
We can do that. So did the specialized tech services, I'm sorry, did you say that was for the SPCA?
Yes, well, as discussed earlier, there was a contract increase, and so that's a line item that we put the appropriations and we pay the SPCA from.
I'm not an accountant by any means, but specialized services / tech, it's hard for me to make a transition to SPCA from that entry.
Yeah, these are general accounts that are used citywide. And so there isn't a specific account that says SPCA contract. This is part of the account structure of the city that's used for everything that the city does. And so that's the line item or the account that we've chosen to hold the SPCA contract.
I guess that's why I pay my accountant so much money to do my books. Now, land acquisition 57101, just a little bit farther down, is that an additional 200,000 to the 250,000 that we just discussed?
No, that was already covered. I believe you already asked that question concerning, that's the same amount. That's what you were talking about.
Well, one's 200 and one's 250. That's why I brought it up.
Where was the 250 that you referenced, if I may?
I don't see that right in front of me, but I'll try to get that. If I need further clarification, I'll bring those
Because
two.
this is the same amount of money this is the same object that you were referring to.
And then the actuals for 18 on that same line item was $4.3 million.
Yes,
What
that
happened?
was, I would have to defer, that was purchase. I'll have to get back to you on the purchase of that. I know that it was obviously approved by council, but I will have to get back to you on exactly what land we purchased back in 2018.
Just that these numbers
Oh,
are so diametrically opposed.
Was it fire headquarters?
That might make sense.
That might have been fire headquarters, because I think that was back in 2018.
We'll confirm, and if that's
Yeah.
not accurate, we'll
No,
get back
we'll,
to you.
we'll look back there and find it.
It's just when they're line item, and for someone that I'm trying to comprehend this, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Therefore, I've got to ask about it to get that clarification. And then special projects at $1.6 million, that's 58004. What are those special projects?
That's where we put the, that's where that homeless assistance money is. That's where the CDBG repayment money is. That's where the parade money is that you've already covered. That's also where the election costs are. That's also where the youth council and the summer internship money is. That's all gathered together and put under that account.
Council President?
Uh-huh.
Can maybe we get them to give us a detailed line
Sure,
item?
we can do that.
Both for that one and then the one that he previously asked, the professional
The
services
professional services consulting?
Because that way we know what is going to the various lobbyists and so forth.
Yep, we
Thank
can do
you.
that.
I'm trying to find that 250. I'm looking at B78, but I don't see it. I thought that was the reference. But Member Chavez has a filler question.
Just because this is related to this, and so we have a more expedited meeting on Thursday. So with regards to the SPCA contract, what is the amount that the city charges per dog for a dog license? Does Laura have that information? You don't? Can we get that information? Then also along with that, what is the enforcement mechanism that the city of Fresno uses to enforce that provision? And have we enforced it in the past? And if so, how much revenue has that generated? Thank you.
Okay. My staff indicates that page B78 in last year's budget had the 250,000. And then this year, apparently it's 200,000, but I'm not sure if there's a discrepancy there. If you could clarify that for us, that'd
Yes.
be fantastic.
Yeah, we can clarify that.
And then we had special projects at 1.6 million.
Yeah, that was the listing that Councilmember Soria asked for.
Okay. And then under the Fresno Metropolitan Museum, the public relations information is that's on page 60, bottom half of the page.
Yes.
$200,000 per year for public relations and information.
That is I believe that is a payment that is made to CMAQ per the contract, and we receive that back in rent, and it's kind of a circular.
A push, as they say?
It's $200,000.
Okay, but I mean, it's a push.
That's the whole thing, yeah,
Okay.
that's the whole thing.
And then Utilities, I was curious, it's 50,000 as amended in 2019. 2018, it was actually $74,000. This year, the budget proposal is $155,000. That seemed like a plus of over 100,000.
Yeah, I believe we increased that because there are more tenants now in the building, and the bills are increasing.
More tenants and
so-
higher utility costs.
Oh, okay.
Increase in the.
I didn't hear you, Henry.
So there's more tenants, and the utility rates has gone up as well. So combination, it's driving that cost up.
That's a lot of money. That's $105,000 more. So can you really give us where they're giving you that from?
We can give you some detail, although you can see in 2018, the actuals were $73,000, which was a substantial increase over the year before. But we can get you the detail as far as what they've spent so far this year. But that is an estimate on the part of facilities as to how much they're going to need for the fiscal year upcoming. But we can get you the actuals as of this year.
But out of curiosity, if you have more tenants, don't you have more people that can spread the cost of being there? Or are we just pony up the money for whoever's there?
I'd have to get the details of the lease, but since last year's budget, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 2 more floors at the Met that are occupied now than last year, so utility costs are going up.
Understood.
So I don't have the details of the lease in terms of who's paying for what, but we can get you, we can get those excerpts from the lease and send them over to you.
Yeah, and if you can just, and maybe in a simple email, tell us, don't we charge any new tenant part of the utility costs for being in that building? Or do we just absorb the costs irrespective of who they are?
We'll get that information to you in the tray memo.
Council, I'm somewhat familiar with the building, and what I know is that there's a central HVAC system that serves the entire building. You can't break it up by tenant. So I think that's just worked into their lease as part of their lease payment. Isn't that right? Because there's just one system for the entire building.
I understand that there's one air conditioning system, but like in this building, we all pay our fair share towards the cost of keeping this place heated and cooled. Why aren't we doing the same thing when we add more tenants into the Met?
We'll get that information to you.
Right below that is repair, maintenance, et cetera, at $89,000. It's a $59,000 increase. Could we get some explanation on that as well? Sounds like the building or the operation is really expensive.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to the age of the building and the fact that there are more people using it, but we can get you the detail on the 89.5.
That 54301 entry. And then miscellaneous expenses were $245 in 18 actual, and now we're at $25,000. It's some reason it went up substantially. Like $23,000 plus. It's 58005.
Yeah, we'll include that on the list.
And under the HEAP fund at page 61, it's got $3.1 million. Is that all HEAP money?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And only HEAP money, I
Yes,
presume?
it is. Yeah.
Okay, good. Also, I'm kind of nitpicking this, but this is, I got to scrape together every dollar I can for my project. So 24057 on page 61, special projects, it's 760, actual 760,000, it went up to $1 million. Is there a reason for a $250,000 increase?
Oh, that's the cable PEG funds. Those come in separately and are passed through to the CMAQ. That is part of the Comcast franchise fee, and that is paid directly to us, and then it is passed through to CMAQ. I can get you the detail as to the contract and the requirements, but that is a contractual obligation, and that is a pass-through.
Okay. And then economic development infrastructure, 58004. Special projects, $500,000 with 0 and 18 actuals. It's up to $500,000.
Henry, if you could.
That is part of a payment that's going towards the Lingo project.
Lingo, huh? And is that general fund money?
No, that is not a general fund. It's part of that fund that's the 24067. That would be considered special revenue.
The area right above it. I got you, 24. Okay, good. And I guess my last question on these entries is the economic incentives from 1.6 to 3.1 are zero. Actually, in the 18 actuaries, that's 24069, page 61.
Those are payments that we're budgeting for that relates to the Amazon and Ulta tax rebates.
Can you be more specific? Because I just read the request that I made that you guys responded to, that where I requested how much revenue are we getting from Amazon and Ulta, and how much are we paying out? And that memo suggested we weren't paying them out this amount of funds.
The memo was to identify what has come in as of, if you will, as of year to date. What we're seeing on the budget is what we're planning for FY20, for example. So it's two time frames. So again, the memo was year to date, as of, if you will, today. We're looking here in the budget of out in the future.
So what's for simple terms for the non-accountant here, in total, how much have we received from Amazon and Ulta, and how much do we intend to pay out to them, and in what years?
I don't have the memo in front of me, but the first part of your question would have shown how much we had received.
That's what you guys gave us in a memo, the 400,000?
Correct.
And then this shows that we plan to pay them out 1.6 million?
In 2020, correct.
So it's...
I'm sorry.
1.6 was
19.
amended for
1.6 is
2019.
Yes, in 2019.
And so in 2019, we were scheduled to pay them 1.6 million. In 2020, we're scheduled to pay them 3.1 million.
Potentially, yes.
So it's...
That's what we're planning.
So it's costing us money as a city.
Well,
We're taking in less than we're receiving back.
I don't know that I would say that it's costing us money. This is a pass-through of property and sales tax that's going to Amazon and Ulta as a consequence of the deal that the contract that they signed for job enhancement, and they have met those goals. And so this is the ramping up of that program because they've spent the last year getting the thing up and running. And so now we are seeing the results of a full year's worth of sales tax and property tax. And again, I would point out that the 3.1 million is an estimate, and that we'll see how much is actually received during the course of the next fiscal year.
So Jane, again, I'm the non-accountant, but we received $485,000 in tax revenue from Amazon. In 19, we paid them 1.6. In 2020, we're scheduled to pay them 3.1 million. How is that not costing us money?
I would like to go back because to my understanding, that is a pass-through, and so the estimate of 1.6 million is just that. But I will get with Henry and I will get you an explanation for that, because I believe that we are anticipating we will be getting more money in the door, and that we will be remitting that to Amazon and to Ulta and to the Gap. But I will pursue that with Henry and get you a reconciliation between the two.
And Jane and Henry, if you guys already know my position on Amazon and Ulta, and the deal that the council signed is the deal that they signed. What I'm trying to understand is a full, complete picture, right? How much revenue are we getting from them? How much are we paying them back? Irrespective of whether it's a pass-through or not, it's real money. It's money that if we don't have to pay back, we would be putting into police or fire. So if you can just make it that simple for us, I don't think we're going to debate relitigate the contracts, but I just need a clear understanding of the financial liability or benefit of those agreements.
The impact.
Yes, thank you.
And then last point of clarification on page 63, the bottom, 70213, it says B building / Granite Park DS.
That's the debt service.
Is there a way to break? I think the B building, well, I don't know that, so how do we break that down?
Between the B building and Granite Park?
Correct, with the two entries there.
Yeah, I'd have to go back to the bond indenture and ask finance to let me know how much of that is for each one of those buildings, if they can break it out. We don't track it as a budgetary matter. We just get told by finance that this is how much the debt service payment is, and that's how much we have to pay. But if you want to break out between those two entities, I can ask finance to get me that information.
I definitely want on a Granite Park. That's very important to my district. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have. Member Soria had some additional questions.
Thank you, Council President. Going back to the line item two on page 59, there's a couple things. So on line item 58010, we see a significant increase in terms of the $300,000 for taxes and bond premiums, but the actual year, the previous year, we only paid $166. So wondering what the difference is and what to date have we really expended. I know that we still have the $300,000 mark there, but is there going to be a savings like we saw the previous years?
There might very well be. I would have to look at what was actually estimated, but again, we go through each one of these revenues, estimate what we think we're actually going to spend or actually going to expend on that, and if there is any savings, again, that's a part of the carryover that has been used to develop the FY20 overall budget. So,
but we're pretty much at the closing of the calendar.
Yeah, no, I can get you the actual.
300,000. We could probably know by today how much we're at. In the previous years, we've also put about 300,000, but we've only expended 166.
No,
obviously, you guys know that we are in a situation where we need to find dollars to be able to mitigate the motions that were made. So, like Council President mentioned, we have to scrape every single line item, which is why we're asking these questions, and so that will be helpful to us.
Yeah, I'll get you the actual year-to-date for the line item.
The other thing, just 2 lines down, on the loans from city to OS agency, the 600,000, I thought that was what the Lingo project was, because I know we had done like an internal loan to redevelopment and so forth to make sure that we fill in the gap for the McKinley Blackstone project. Is that it? Because you mentioned earlier that the other 500,000 or something like that was the economic development infrastructure was what the Blackstone McKinley project. Can someone clarify that, please?
Councilmember Soria, that 600,000 is a second piece towards the Lingo project.
Okay, is that the loan for that we did to the RDA?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is the loan. So what was the other one for?
In essence, that was...
We had already set that aside previously, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it's been carried over to where now we're budgeted to pay it out.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. Okay. Also, we pay a significant amount for memberships and dues. What kind of memberships and dues do we pay out of the general city purpose budget? I thought most departments have their own line items on memberships and dues and so forth.
They do. Let me, I believe that is for League with California Cities is one of them. I'm trying to think of some of the others that we pay.
Can you give us a breakdown?
Yeah,
also?
let me get you a list because I don't have, that's the only one I know is the National League of Cities that we have to pay. And that's quite expensive.
Yeah. I can imagine. On the next page, on line item 59117, we have 2 back-to-back $150,000. So overhead charge to capital and then facilities repair and replace projects. Wondering what those are.
You say where you're looking again?
Oh, sorry, line item, page 60, line item 59, 117, and they're back to back. Just wondering what those are for.
Yeah, the facilities repair and replacement projects are for unanticipated projects, particularly in City Hall, that may come up, emergency repairs and things of that nature. We were just fortunate that in 2018 we didn't have any. The overhead charge to capital, I will have to get back to you on that because I'm not entirely certain. But I think it has to do with citywide capital charges that cannot be assigned to a particular project. But I do know that the other one is for emergency repairs in case something should break. But anyway, I can get you an explanation for the 59,117.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
wait a minute.
A little bit below on 61,001. Last year, we had set aside $500,000 for the CDBG repayment. I thought this $500,000 was for that. Was it not?
It's not. That
So what is this?
500,000 amended, that was for the cannabis initiative. We put it in contingency until further development would take place. However, since it didn't come to fruition, we didn't budget for it.
So this 500,000, where is it right now? Because I know that it has, has some of it been spent or no?
No.
So-
Because since it's in contingency, it would have to come back to council for approval to move it into.
Okay, so right now, to date, we haven't moved it.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'd like to point out that there are some dollars that this council can use there for some of the motions that we've made. So since it hasn't been used to date there, because I know that that's going to be the $1 million question, how are we going to pay for all these motions? At least there's $500,000 there.
Well, I would point out that we were not anticipating that was going to be spent. And so, again, and I hate to be a broken record on this, is that money was a part of the $17 million carryover, and so that was reprogrammed into FY20. So, in essence, that money has already been allocated.
Just back to general fund.
Yes, that is general fund. That $500,000 was for the establishment of the cannabis process and to fund those two positions, but they were never filled since we are still making efforts to get the text amendment and the AR done and all the rest of it. And so that money was not rebudgeted next year. It was reallocated to other purposes within the general fund.
So the CDBG dollars that I mentioned earlier are somewhere in the special projects line item?
Actually, yes, I believe it is.
And that's the one that you're going to give us also a detailed, okay,
Yes.
perfect.
If I may, before we move on, I just wanted to point out that before today, we had 50 requests for information. So I believe there's at least a couple dozen that have come up during this budget item alone. So we are doing our best to get trade memos out in a very timely fashion, but, just wanted to point out that before today, we had 50. And I think we have maybe 5, maybe 6 trade memos distributed to you all.
And we appreciate your guys' diligence. I know that you guys are trying to work as fast as possible. I think that there is time. We have a budget vote set for the 20th, but if we can't get all the information, I think that we can expect to vote on the 27th. That gives everyone enough time. That way it doesn't stress you guys out too much in getting the information back out to us. One last question
Let me interrupt you there because it does push us to the limit. So although we're stressed here, let's remember we got this budget binder 2 weeks ago. So we're pushing as hard as we can, and we need everyone to cooperate to hit these deadlines. I'd hate to go to the 27th, but it is a viable option.
Thank you, Council President.
So thank you.
You planned ahead, so. No, I'm saying staff for them to have to prepare all this additional information. So last question on the employee termination payout. We've seen a significant increase, wondering why. On page 62, it's gone up from 2.4. I don't know where we're at for this year. I know that we allocated $3 million. I'm curious to date how much we've paid out.
Okay,
and
we'll get you the actual to date, but that is a reflection of people retiring and the leave payoffs that have to be paid to each of the employees based on their leave balances. So that's based on actual experience, and as you can see, it went up and down, and so we're anticipating that money will be spent, but we'll get you the actual for that account.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Those were all the questions that I had.
The screen is clear at this time, so we'll take it to the public. Anyone in the public wish to comment on this item, please do so. And if you'd like to comment on the city attorney or clerk's office, you have that opportunity as well. Give us your name and address if you'd like to do so. Seeing no one approaching, we'll close that part, and I guess we'll move to city council offices in the next 33 minutes.
Council President, similar to city attorney, city clerk, I do not have a presentation for council. So.
Would you like to move on to mayor and city manager? Okay, we'll move on to mayor, city manager. Thank you, Henry.
Council President, council members, the mayor and city manager's department budget starts on B-1. Its funding source is general fund. The overall budget for 2020 is $4,449,000. That's a 7.6 increase over FY19 amended. Total permanent FTE positions in the department is 30, with a 0.5 increase over FY19. As far as the appropriations budgeted, it is basically a status. There are a couple items that were added. For example, there's $2,700 that was added to our conference and travel, and there's also another $8,000 that has been budgeted for a new copier. Again, there are no new added staff positions. The change of 0.5 is just a reflection of two positions that were added last year that are now identified as a full FTE of 1.0. Those two positions that were added, just as a reminder, they are currently defunded. So there are no dollars related to those positions that were last year that's being carried over this year. That concludes my overview. Thank you.
I do have a couple questions for you. When we look at this mayor, city manager's budget, by what percent did their budget grow from last year's actuals to the proposed? And if you can guide me to the page where it reflects it.
The percent growth that I quoted, Council Vice President, if you look at B-4. Okay.
Big binder?
The big binder, correct. There is a financial table there, and towards the bottom, where it's under appropriations, total department expenditures for 2020 are $4,449,000. And then to the right of that, you'll see the 7.6%. That's actually a percentage change from the amended budget.
Got it. Okay. And what's the percentage growth for the council's budget with the same comparison?
And Henry, while you're doing that, could you include the same growth for the city attorney's budget?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And the percentage for the police department? Since you know what? Just give us a memo on the percentage growth proposed by this budget for every department. that would, give us all apples to apples comparisons.
That's request number 75. I just want to point that out.
It should be pretty easy. I'm sure you guys have an Excel spreadsheet that can just generate that pretty quickly. Thank you.
Transparency.
Oh, you're done? Okay, good. Thank you, Member Soria.
I actually do have one question, Council President. Really quick, just one last question. When we budget, and does this proposed budget include adjustments for increases in healthcare cost, for raises, whether they're part of the MOU or not? Is all that, does the budget get increased to accommodate those increase in cost?
Specifically, the contractual obligations, yes. We
Correct.
make sure that those are embedded into the budget.
Into the budget?
Correct.
And the healthcare too, right?
Correct.
What about for the council budget? Is the council budget also increased to accommodate for those kind of fluctuations, or
There are increases that were included as well.
for raises and healthcare cost?
Yes, that is correct.
Besides the council members' salaries?
Correct. Those are all accounted for. So if there were raises that were established, those are also accounted for in your budget as well.
But I think that the raises that are given to the assistants may not have been. Is that correct? Yeah, that's correct. Now the healthcare costs, yes, those are built in and baked into your budgets.
Got it. And the increase for anybody who's represented by a labor group,
correct,
that has whatever 2%, 3%,
correct.
That's reflected in the mayor's budget and every other department's budget, but not in the council, right? Because our folks are not represented and don't have the same increase.
Yeah, none of only the only positions that would have been in your budget would have been Marisol and Cindy, because I believe they're both FCEA.
Got it.
And so if there are any increases for those individuals, those are baked into the budget as well.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I was going to have a follow-up question to that, because I was under the assumption that any increase in costs we absorb within the base budget that we've had for the last few years. Can you explain?
Councilman,
So,
repeat your question?
these increase in costs like the health care and so forth, I thought that we were absorbing them within the existing budget that we have, the base budget that we get. So I know that our base budget went up this year because of the raises, but when we give raises to our staff, that is not accounted for beyond our base budget. We have to give raises within our existing operation budget.
Two main components to consider. So yes, in the base budget, there are absorptions taking place. But in addition to that, you also have carryover, that whatever you don't spend in prior year, that gets back and built into your budget as well to help provide additional.
But that's carryover from the base budget that we didn't spend.
From the prior year.
Yeah. So if we spend it all, there's never a carryover.
If that is the case, but what we do see is monies do not get spent, and so we budget what is anticipated not to be spent into your respective budgets.
In addition to our base budget.
Correct.
In addition to, okay.
For example, Councilmember Soria, if you go to page B-11, that top table, you'll see the breakdown where it starts with the base budget. Further to the right, there is a column for carryover estimate.
Yeah, so duly noted. Thank you. Couple questions on the line item. So in the previous presentation on general city purpose, I asked about the leave payout at termination dollars. So this one, this line item for this, for the mayor and city manager's office also has. So I'm just wondering, why is it that this department, and I've noticed that other departments have, so why do we have that other set of funds out? Like what
That is the
divisions does it
charge
cover?
that goes into that fund. So that 3.3 million, that is where this money goes. So each department is charged a certain amount for leave payoff at term based on a methodology that I would leave Henry to try to explain. But that money then is a charge that goes from each department, and it goes into that fund that you referenced in general city purpose, and it's paid out of there.
Okay.
So this is basically a double reflection of the same amount of money. It's a charge to each department that then is put into a pool of money that is used to do leave payoffs.
Okay. Then also on the line item for professional services and consultants, just wondering, there was almost a double increase. What are you guys planning to hire, consulting or special services? It's going up. It went, in the last couple years, it's gone up significantly.
Councilmember Soria, within that line item, there are appropriations, for example, that my office utilizes for our budget system. So my intent is to be able to make some significant enhancements to our system next year. But in addition to that, there's some other needs I'm going to need for that system, which is planning for, with our new financial systems in the near horizon, I need to make sure that our budget system can connect with it. But those are additional costs that I'm trying to get ahead of the game before being in a reactive mode, which could be more expensive. So a lot of that increase is relating to basically positioning our budget system in a manner that will function to the most efficient way it can going forward.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Question for, well, I guess, I don't know if it's you, Henry, or the city manager. The difference in space rentals versus city hall, are those like other areas that we have city staff like outside of city hall? Is that those rents?
The space rental line item that you see, that actually relates to the location of the budget office. Since it's outside of City Hall, it's part of our non-PERS budget.
Okay. Those are all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. And member Esparza is up next.
Yeah, I had a question on the mayor's staff. So it says from fiscal 18 to this proposed budget, it's grown by 5, from 25 to 30. I know you had mentioned, alluded to 2 of the positions, but I wanted to know what have those positions been? The 5 new positions in the last 2 fiscal years.
I have to look that up. He's looking at.
I know one of them was TJ's position, the customer relations and analytics position to oversee Fresco and the call center volume.
Is she still being? Is that position? Is she still in that position?
Absolutely,
or?
yeah.
Okay.
She's filling in too as the interim parks director, but yes.
We also added an executive assistant. So that'd be. We also added an executive assistant.
Who?
To my office. Iman.
So that's 2.
There's one more. I don't remember off the top of my head though.
There's one more, and then you said the other 2 are not currently filled. They're authorized but not filled.
That they're currently authorized. They're what's called defunded, meaning there is no budget assigned to those positions.
Okay, so nobody and there's no one in those positions right now.
Correct.
Okay, so the EA,
as well as no budget assigned.
The EA, TJ, and then one more.
And I'm thinking it was Myra, also the community coordinator for John Gliotta, our Office of Independent Review.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I want to make a motion on the council budgets. I want to move the discretionary funding of $50,000 into the base budget. So I want to eliminate discretionary funding and make the base budgets $319,000 for each council office.
Is there a net increase to our budget?
That is a zero net increase in that one.
Second.
Seconded by Member Arias. Any other motions, Member Esparza?
Not for right now. I'll hold off for now.
I have a couple motions to make. Are we done?
Let me go out to the public real quick. Anyone in the public wish to discuss either the mayor's budget or the city council budget, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close that. And Member Arias, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion for 3 items on the budget. One, for $60,000 to be allocated towards the public safety memorial. That will be on the agenda for Thursday. The second item would be $500,000 for the Immigrant Affairs Committee recommendations that will be forthcoming at some point. Those 2 are one-time items, or one-time funds and cost. And then adding $1.4 million ongoing to the infrastructure allocation budgets for the councils. So that would result in $200,000 ongoing for each council district for infrastructure. And just to give the public some context, that means that each council member gets to basically trim 2 or 3 neighborhoods more a year of trees, or 1 neighborhood of sidewalks. That's how costly it is. And $1.4 million for infrastructure, sidewalks, tree trimming is something that we should prioritize.
That is seconded by Member Soria.
Was that one motion or 3 motions?
Could you
It
clarify?
looks like, I think it's 3 motions.
3 motions.
Could you clarify that you said $5,000 for the immigration?
Yes, $500,000 in one-time funds for the immigration.
5,000. You said.
500,000.
500,000?
Yes. Yes, 500,000. One-time funds for to implement whatever recommendations they develop, and if it's not needed, then it would remain in the general fund.
Could you clarify? $500,000 for the immigration committee. I mean, what do you have any idea what you're referring to?
So, as you know, council member, we appointed a committee. The committee is going to be meeting shortly, and they'll come up with a series of recommendations. Those recommendations will have costs associated to the recommendations. Some of them will be things that we can handle internally. Some may be things that we can't. But my thought is that if we're going to appoint a committee, give them a task to come up with recommendations, that we should also set aside money to potentially fund the recommendations. If there is no recommendations, or the recommendations are cost neutral, then the money would not be spent and allocated.
Well, I suspect they will not be cost neutral, what they will propose. Would that part of that be what you're envisioning, a defense fund for people here illegally?
I'm not envisioning anything in particular.
Okay.
I think that's the task of the committee to have that discussion, come up with the recommendation. Like any other task force that we set up, we just set up a task force for the dislocation. We also allocated money for that purpose. We set up a task force for cannabis. We set aside positions for the cannabis ordinance. So whenever we do any type of task force or recommendations, we should set aside money to implement them.
But you're not identifying a source at this point?
General fund.
I mean, yeah, well, general fund,
Right.
but nothing that's getting cut. You're just saying general fund.
General fund, like anything else, we haven't yet identified the cuts.
Well, I identified cuts, but, and you said 500,000 for that, and I'm sorry, 1.4 infrastructure for combined
Correct.
for infrastructure budgets?
Correct. It would be $200,000 for each council district for infrastructure projects, sidewalk improvements, tree trimming, the day-to-day stuff that we deal with.
And what was your third one?
And the third one is $60,000 for public safety memorial. That will be on the agenda on Thursday for approval. And those are costs associated to the infrastructure part of the memorial.
Was that 50 or 60? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
60.
0.
Anyone else? I think that is the extent of our hearings today. I think we sort of addressed city council with motions. Is there anything else that needs to be addressed regarding city council?
I think lunchtime needs to be addressed.
All right, so with that, we'll close today's budget hearings, and our upcoming budget hearing dates, Tuesday, these are tentative, of course, Tuesday, June 18th at 9 a.m., vote on motions, the 20th, vote on final budget, and we'll reserve the 27th for final vote if needed. So with that in mind, thank you all for being here. Thanks to all our participants. Meeting is adjourned.